As, again, one of the most pivotal elections of our time, which seems to be every time, is coming along, it seems like the conservatives still cannot help themselves by alienating half of the country and doing a pretty good job of it. At the same time, Trump seems to be doing a great job of trying to fix things and put the world back together the way it should have been. Now, the sad part is the fact that it didn't seem like he wanted to do it right away because he was concerned. Because, again, we just have such short attention spans. Let's go ahead and get into it. I'm Caleb Smith, and this is the Tradesman Talk Show. And really, it's just where you come to hear someone who's not famous talk about politics. Now, the sad part is, as all of this is heading to an election time, and we're going there, and it's very much something that we are going to be struggling in because it's an off year, and of course we always struggle in an off year when, especially if your guys in the office, and we kind of expected that, but there was a little bit of a hope because a lot of things that we were doing were kind of progressively getting better. And then unfortunately, we had this whole movement against Trump that started kind of around the Iran war, and they decided to use that as the prop for why they really hated him. And really, in all things, it was that they hated Israel so much that we, as a stand-in, of course, are the reason why Iran's horrible, and not Iran's horrible. We are horrible, and Iran should not be attacked. And again, now mind you, we do have proof that Iran had the ability to shoot a missile that could hit Paris, and they were working on developing a nuclear bomb, but of course, that doesn't matter, and why would we care? Now, throughout all this time, and all the different things that Trump has been doing, he's been getting hammered not so much as in these particular areas. When he went into Venezuela, when he was blowing up the bombs in Cuba, the boats, not Cuba, in the Caribbean, and when he was surrounding Cuba and blockading it, and still is to some degree. And then we went after Iran, and everyone's freaking out, and they're not putting two and two together. And what's funny is I was actually watching a clip of all people's, Tim Pool, and Tim Pool had a great thing that he was showing basically how, because of all the things that Trump has been doing, and even to the point of changing the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, he centered the world really around where we ship out our oil and the fact that America is the shipper of all that kind of stuff. And again, we have been blessed by God with so many resources in this country that even they're talking about lithium, and even what was the other one recently that they came out with that they needed like a ton of it, and they're like, oh, China has the only access to everything, and we're like, oh yeah, no, we got a ton of it, we got more and more of it. Well, what's funny is Tim Pool, and I have pulled it up here, but Tim Pool was showing basically how because of the way we did it, we removed the necessity of running things through the Hormuz Strait. And then Donald Trump came out with a tweet this morning, and he said, or was it yesterday? Sorry. It was yesterday at 6 p.m. He said, "No one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a greater opportunity to make a deal than me." And that's very, very true. Unfortunately, it's to the point where I don't even like it. And he says, tragically for them, they have failed to take it. Therefore, today I am announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. And of course, he has to have that in all caps. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale. Their navy is gone, their air force is destroyed, their military factories are now rubble, and their currency is worthless, and their country is hanging by a thread. Today, I am also announcing that any country that allows its financial institutions, businesses, airports, or government entities to provide any type of lifeline to Iran will itself face tremendous economic consequences. Oil smuggling, swap lines, cash transfers, exchange houses, ship registries, front companies, it all needs to stop now. You know who you are. This will be an economic D-Day, and we need all of our allies to stand with the United States of America to isolate and defeat the Iranian threat. These maniacs are on the ropes, and these historic measures will cripple them and their ability to project terror worldwide. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald Trump. And what I thought was very, very, very interesting about it is he's finally really, really nailing down all things, which is really big for China because China has been shadow helping them for quite a bit here. But if he manages to truly isolate the entire country, because here's something that people kept getting complained about. With all these sanctions and all these things that we're doing against Iran, the people of Iran are going to suffer and they're not going to have the money that they need and the food. And guys, they already don't have those things. They already don't have those things. They're already on the ropes. The people are. What it is that has money and has things right now is the government of Iran, or the military really of Iran, the IRGC. And by taking away these last bits of help and those little smuggling that they would do, like he talks about the little smuggling pipelines that they would have of getting them out under different countries' flags and all that stuff, if we can get rid of all of that, then there's nothing to provide them with anything to fund their war effort. And if we continue down that road, then we can finally get this thing finally done. Now, there was another tweet by the name of Eric Dougherty. I'm sure I'm not saying that right. But he's talking about how we've already had it figured out where we've nailed down the lines that we want to get oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. But that's not even the biggest thing. I was going to go through his tweet, but I'm not going to. Really, he's talking about all the pipelines that we've ended up running, that there are pipelines being done to circumvent the Hormuz Strait so that we will never, ever, ever have to rely upon it ever again. And besides the fact that America is now like the #1 exporter of oil again, and we're shipping it all out, but we will never have to rely upon them again. And that takes away all the leverage that they have, which is what we want. We want there to be no leverage on America, because here's the problem. If we don't create pathways now to circumvent the Hormuz Strait, then when the next guy gets into office, they can mess it all up completely. And thankfully that is being prevented right now. Now, I thought this was interesting. I saw a clip, and again, so there's a source called Babylon Bee, and they are funny. They're hysterical. They did a lot of comedy and satire mostly. But the problem is, eventually the satire got kind of wild because the satire and truth was so hard to pull apart from each other, because just what's happening around the world, and especially amongst the Democrats, is so crazy that when they would do things, it wouldn't even matter. Well, they ended up creating a news one called Not the Beam, and I love this. So there's they put out not a clip, but a post, and it says the Trump admin stops giving refundable tax credits to illegal aliens, and then they have in parentheses, yes, that was happening. And so someone commented underneath it and said, every day since Trump got elected, there's another headline like illegal aliens banned from accessing nuclear codes, or MS-13 loses diplomatic immunity. And you're like, wait, what? They were allowed to have that? And it's true. So much of this stuff is like, why? Why are we allowing this? And then I saw another thing where they're going through and they're finally doing the census stuff for the voter rolls in these counties, and they're finding just how many people from 2020 were illegally voting in our elections, and we are told that it does not happen. We are told that it does not happen. The greatest threat to the Democratic Party is that there's not actually that many people that are voting for the Democratic Party. Of American citizens. That's why they have to import people who want to pay themselves the payday. That's what they have to do. They have to do that to create it. Now, all that said, we can win under those factors, but not if we keep doing this stuff. And I did a whole video on it, and I'm not going to harp on it too much, but I thought it was interesting. There was someone who did a perspective from a biblical perspective, because they're making this thing trying to make it become biblical, but the whole Lindsay Clancy thing. And I'm going to read again for everyone's edification Matt Walsh's original post, which has become the one that's been the driving factor for all of this. And it says, a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this, but much of the, quote, depression that parents and not just moms suffer after childbirth is due not so much to hormones, but the fact that children, especially babies, are demanding and difficult and require us to subordinate our needs and desires for their sake. The more selfish you are, the more of an adjustment is going to be. When he said that, immediately what popped in my mind is Pharisee. Because whenever you try to take something that's a problem and over spiritualize it, you're a Pharisee. And that's what it ends up being. And I thought this was interesting. So there was someone who had posted it, and they're for basically hear me out, two sides kind of thing. They said, when Christians turn mental illness into sin, cruelty starts to feel righteous. So if we can say that mental illness is a sin, that you're just not trusting God enough and all that kind of thing, then we can be cruel to you. And it makes us feel good because it makes us feel righteous. And you can see this trend online right now with Matt Walsh, where he's going one after another and after another. And I mentioned this because it was cracking me up that when I was trying to look for his nasty tweets, there were so many of them, it was hard to pick from for my last video. And he was posting, and he's addicted to the anger that he drives with this. He's addicted to it, and so he was responding or commenting or posting on this whole topic because he was driving up so much anger and frustration and people and everything else that it was like, I was looking at the post and it was like 9 hours ago, 10 hours ago, 11 hours ago, 11 hours ago, 11 hours ago, 12 hours ago, 12, 12, 12, and 13, 14, 15. I'm like, dude, this guy's on there every hour on the hour going into X to tweet about it. Now, continuing along this topic, this person was trying to put out a lot of positive messages to moms and dads out there and parents. And it says, postpartum depression is not proof that a mother is selfish. It's a serious medical condition caused by hormones changing, neurobiology, genetics, trauma, sleep deprivation, stress, and inadequate support. Selfishness is not a diagnosis. And I'm going to say, there's a big difference, and there's someone who is saying this. No, here it is. Your personal experience is not the universal measure of someone else's illness. And I thought this was great because sometimes I don't have always the best words for it. That's why I look for, other people. That's why people use quotes. That's why people, use slogans and so on. But people don't suffer things and then believe that you can't suffer things instead of understanding that that's not how it works. So if you don't have this problem, great, good for you. You know what you also may not have? You may not have cancer. Okay, well, someone else has cancer. Does that mean that they're in sin because they have cancer? What are you, Job's friends now? No. It doesn't mean because they have some kind of illness or mental problem that they're just not trusting God enough or they're not doing righteous things. That's not how it works. Because there was a young man that I was working with, and he was doing everything he possibly could to possibly bring himself under the subjection and subjugation of God and obeying everything God wanted. And his mental condition would not let that be enough. And he literally walked around day in and day out to the point of insanity, expecting the ground to pull him in and send him to hell because he could not get over things. But we have to realize that the greatest part of our testimony is our compassion to those that need it around us, and not to be like that. Now, and the sad part is, again, this is the reason why I'm saying all this stuff is not even just because of the support to women that need the help. And again, I talked about the personal experiences that we've had in my life of people that I've known intimately well that have had major problems. But we're going to lose the election based off of just our inability to have compassion for people that are going through things, and especially women, just because we're so stupid that we have no discernment in being able to tell, yes, I know that people going on camera and filming themselves doing these erratic, stupid things for the show of it are not the ones I'm talking to. I'm talking about to the moms that are out there that are not like that are suffering quietly amongst themselves. And unfortunately, it has ramifications when we go after people with mental health problems in such a way. Now, Alex Clark said, and she's a conservative on the right, says we need to take all moms off social media until we can figure out what the heck is going on. Okay. Allie Beth Stuckey said, your wife probably shouldn't be on TikTok. And what was funny is she got called on the carpet for it because she's all over TikTok. And she's like, I never opened TikTok, so it's not the same. Yeah, if you're marketing to TikTok, but then complaining because the people that you're marketing to are on TikTok and saying they shouldn't be on there, that's a double standard, Chiquita. Okay? That's not good. And then I'm going to finish with this last quote by this lady that I was reading earlier. And she said, we now have Christian women telling other women to leave the internet, repent for disagreeing, or let their husbands take away their phones. The same women defended their own rights to speak, teach, and build platforms on those very phones. Apparently, women having voices is biblical until those voices cannot be controlled. Now, I don't take her point to the fullest, but I wanted to read her full quote. I'm not a super feminist. Sorry, I'm not. But my point behind this is this. The main problem that they're having is that they're deliberately deciding for some reason, and I cannot nail it down why, but they're deliberately misunderstanding what people are saying when these women say, I can understand what Lindsay Clancy was going through. No one's saying that they wanted to kill their own children. That's not what they're saying. And this is my final word on it. All they're saying is, we suffered some major sufferings, major side effects. And we understood what that aloneness was. And unfortunately, all these dingleberries, and by the way, the chicks on the right, who I always posit on my show and say positive things about, have screwed this one up royally too. Really, really, really have. They have done a terrible job of the messaging that they're doing. Because all this does is the women that are alone in their minds, whether they're physically alone or not, I don't know, but who are alone, they're having these conditions while suffering through the greatest hormonal changes they'll ever have in their life, dealing with some of the worst depressions and anxieties and even psychoses they'll have in their life, will feel less likely to tell anyone now and only cause the situation to be worse. Thanks, guys. You played yourselves. And as I'll leave you with this one last thing that I haven't played this bite yet today, so I got to do it. Here we go. Ready?
Please, please, please stop being a moron.
And that, my friends, is the final thing I have to say. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate everything you guys do, and we'll keep going. I tried something different with my camera today. I used my iPhone because my other camera was giving me some kind of depth problems, and we'll see how it turns out in post. Thank you so much. Like, comment, subscribe. It really does help.